You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your Security Plus certification journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. Data types refer to classifications that distinguish information based on sensitivity, structure, and use. Organizations handle many categories of data, ranging from personal information about employees and customers to intellectual property and operational details that keep systems running. Personally identifiable information, PII, protected health information, PHI, and proprietary business data are examples of sensitive data types requiring heightened protection. Less sensitive categories, such as general marketing materials, may need only minimal safeguards. By clearly defining data types, security teams can align protections with the value and risk of the information, ensuring resources are applied where they matter most. Structured and unstructured data require different approaches for storage and protection. Structured data resides in databases, organized into fields and tables that make it easy to query and control. For example, a customer's address stored in a CRM database can be encrypted at the field level and subject to strict access controls. Unstructured data, however, includes emails, documents, images, and videos scattered across file systems or cloud storage. Because it lacks a fixed schema, it can be harder to classify and secure. Protecting unstructured data often involves broader measures like content scanning, tagging, and centralized data loss prevention tools. The distinction between personally identifiable information, PII, and sensitive personal data is especially important in modern compliance frameworks. PII includes any data that can uniquely identify an individual, such as names, social security numbers, or email addresses. Sensitive personal data goes further, encompassing information that reveals health conditions, political beliefs, or biometric identifiers. For example, a mailing list with customer emails may be PII, but a medical record containing diagnoses constitutes sensitive personal data. The latter demands stricter protections and regulatory oversight, such as HIPAA in healthcare environments or GDPR in European jurisdictions, where penalties for mishandling can be severe. Intellectual property, IP, and business-critical information represent high-value assets for most organizations. IP includes trade secrets, patents, source code, and proprietary designs that provide competitive advantage. Business-critical data encompasses strategic plans, financial records, and operational blueprints that enable day-to-day functioning. For example, the loss of a new product design could undermine years of research investment, while exposure of financial forecasts could damage stockholder confidence. These assets attract both cybercriminals and competitors, making their protection a priority. Unlike regulated data, where compliance often drives security, IP protection stems from business survival and long-term strategic success. Operational and telemetry data form another essential category, often overlooked in security planning. Operational data includes logs, system metrics, and network flow records that support management and troubleshooting. Telemetry provides continuous measurements from devices, applications, and infrastructure components. While this data may not seem sensitive at first glance, it can reveal system configurations, usage patterns, or vulnerabilities if exposed. For example, telemetry from industrial control systems could give attackers insight into how critical processes operate. Protecting operational data ensures adversaries cannot use it to map environments or exploit weaknesses, preserving both security and reliability. Ephemeral data differs from persistent data in lifespan and protection requirements. Ephemeral data exists temporarily, often in memory or caches, and disappears after use. Examples include session keys, browser cookies, or temporary log files. Persistent data, such as database records or archive documents, remain stored until actively deleted. While ephemeral data is short-lived, it still requires safeguards, as attackers who capture it can exploit it immediately. For instance, stolen session tokens can allow unauthorized access, Persistent data, by contrast, requires long-term protections such as encryption, backups, and access controls. Understanding the difference guides appropriate protection strategies for each. Metadata refers to the data about data, and while it may not include the actual content, it can still leak sensitive context. Metadata can reveal who communicated with whom, when, and from where, even if the messages themselves are encrypted. For example, email metadata may show the sender, recipient, and subject line even if the body remains protected. Similarly, file metadata might expose the creator, creation date, and modification history. Attackers and investigators alike can use metadata to infer patterns or connections. Protecting metadata through minimization, anonymization, or strict controls is therefore critical for maintaining privacy. Data classification serves as the foundation for deciding which protections to apply. By labeling information according to sensitivity, such as public, internal, confidential, or restricted organizations, can align controls with risk levels. For example, confidential data might require encryption at rest, limited access rights, and strict audit logging, while public marketing brochures may need only basic integrity checks. Classification drives consistency, ensuring that data receives protection proportional to its value. Without classification, organizations risk applying weak protections to sensitive data or overprotecting non-sensitive data, both of which waste resources and weaken security posture. Location significantly influences data protection requirements, as data may reside on-premises, in the cloud, or at the network edge. On-premises storage allows for direct control but demands dedicated infrastructure and management. Cloud environments introduce shared responsibility models, where providers secure the platform while customers safeguard data configurations. Edge devices like IoT sensors store and process data in remote or constrained environments, making them harder to secure. For example, patient data stored in a hospital data center may follow HIPAA safeguards, while the same data in a cloud environment requires encryption, strict IAM policies, and cloud-native monitoring tools. Inventory and tagging provide the visibility organizations need to manage diverse data types effectively. By cataloging datasets and tagging them with metadata labels such as PII, confidential, or financial administrators can quickly locate sensitive information and apply the right controls. Without an accurate inventory, sensitive data can remain hidden in forgotten file shares or overlooked systems, creating unmonitored risk. For example, discovering an old backup tape with customer records that lacks encryption highlights the danger of poor inventory practices. Tagging ensures consistent handling, streamlining enforcement of security policies across large, distributed environments. Data flow mapping complements classification by tracing how data moves through systems and across networks. Mapping shows where data originates, how it is processed, who accesses it, and where it is stored. For example, mapping a customer purchase might reveal data flowing from the web application to a payment processor, then into accounting systems, and finally into analytics platforms. Each point of transfer becomes a potential exposure point. By documenting these flows, organizations can identify weak spots, such as unencrypted transfers or excessive access permissions, and apply targeted protections to reduce risk at each stage. Identifying and understanding data types is a prerequisite for selecting appropriate controls. Without knowing what data exists, where it resides, and how it moves, security decisions remain guesswork. For example, choosing encryption tools without recognizing that sensitive data is stored in unstructured email archives may leave major gaps. By systematically classifying and mapping data, organizations establish a clear foundation for risk-driven protections. This structured understanding ensures controls are not just reactive, but deliberate, aligning resources with the highest value and most vulnerable assets in the organization's ecosystem. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Encryption strategies must be tailored to the type of data being protected, since different classes of information demand different levels of granularity. Field-level encryption protects individual elements, such as credit card numbers or social security numbers in a database, ensuring only those fields are unreadable without the right keys. Disk-level encryption safeguards entire storage volumes, making it effective for laptops or servers that may be lost or stolen. Transport encryption, such as TLS, secures data while it moves across networks. For example, a payment transaction might combine all three: TLS for transit, field encryption for account details, and disk encryption for database storage. Tokenization and masking offer specialized protection for sensitive data elements, especially in non-production environments. Tokenization replaces sensitive values with non-sensitive equivalents, called tokens, that hold no exploitable meaning outside the tokenization system. Masking obscures portions of data, such as showing only the last 4 digits of a credit card number, so it can be used safely in testing or reporting without exposing full details. For example, developers troubleshooting an application may work with masked customer records that simulate real data while shielding the sensitive portions. These techniques allow business processes to continue without sacrificing security or compliance. Access controls and entitlement management align directly with the sensitivity of data. Highly sensitive classes, such as intellectual property or regulated personal information, require fine-grained access restrictions and continuous entitlement reviews. Entitlement management ensures users only retain rights appropriate to their roles, preventing privilege creep. For example, a financial analyst may have access to quarterly reports but not payroll data, while contractors might be granted time-limited access to project files. By aligning controls with classification, organizations avoid overexposing valuable data while still enabling legitimate work. Access policies enforce the principle of least privilege in day-to-day operations. Retention policies define how long different data types must be stored and when they should be deleted, balancing business, legal, and security needs. Automated purging ensures that data is not kept indefinitely, reducing the impact of breaches and aligning with compliance obligations. For example, customer payment information might be retained only as long as necessary for settlement, then purged to minimize exposure. Meanwhile, healthcare data may be required by regulation to be stored for years. Retention policies ensure data does not linger unnecessarily, protecting privacy while reducing storage costs and compliance risk. Data residency and sovereignty impose additional considerations, especially for organizations operating internationally. Residency refers to where data is physically stored, while sovereignty involves the legal jurisdiction governing it. Regulations like the European Union's GDPR or Canada's PIPEDA impose strict requirements on where personal data can be processed and transferred. For example, customer data collected in France may not legally be moved outside the EU without specific safeguards. Organizations must therefore consider location not just as a technical matter but also a legal one, ensuring storage and processing align with applicable jurisdictions. Monitoring and logging become particularly important for high-value or regulated data types. Activities such as access attempts, modifications, or transfers must be captured and reviewed to detect anomalies or unauthorized use. For example, logging every access to a patient health record creates an audit trail that can be examined for suspicious patterns, such as an employee accessing data outside of their department. Prioritizing monitoring for critical datasets ensures visibility where the stakes are highest. Without strong logging, even the most sensitive data can be accessed without leaving a trace, eroding trust and accountability. Anonymization and pseudonymization provide methods for reducing risk when handling personal data. Anonymization removes identifiers permanently, making it impossible to link data back to individuals. Pseudonymization replaces identifiers with reversible substitutes, allowing re-identification under controlled conditions. For example, anonymized data might be used in medical research where privacy is paramount, while pseudonymized data allows analysis of employee trends without exposing names but can still be reconnected when necessary. Choosing between these methods depends on the balance between privacy and utility, with anonymization offering stronger protection but reduced flexibility. Backup protection and isolated storage are vital for safeguarding critical datasets against loss or compromise. Backups must themselves be secured with encryption and stored separately to prevent them from being corrupted or stolen alongside primary data. Isolated or offline backups, sometimes called air-gapped backups, provide resilience against ransomware that attempts to encrypt or delete all accessible copies. For example, maintaining encrypted backups of intellectual property on a system disconnected from production networks ensures recovery even in the worst-case scenario. Without secure backups, data protections may fail at the very moment they are needed most. Data handling procedures, labeling, and training ensure that employees interact with sensitive information appropriately. Even strong technical controls can be undermined if staff mishandle data such as emailing unencrypted spreadsheets containing customer information. Labeling data with classifications like confidential or restricted helps employees recognize its sensitivity, while training provides guidance on safe handling practices. For example, workers might learn to share files through encrypted channels instead of unsecured email. Procedural reinforcement turns abstract policies into daily behaviors, ensuring that data protections extend beyond technology into the human element of security. Auditing and reporting measures demonstrate control, effectiveness, and compliance with standards. Audits review whether protections are applied consistently, while reports provide evidence to regulators, auditors, or internal stakeholders. For instance, an organization processing credit card data must provide reports showing encryption, access control, and retention policies align with PCI DSS requirements. Auditing is not only about compliance but also about continuous assurance, confirming that controls actually work as intended. Without regular auditing and reporting, organizations risk drifting away from their own standards or being caught unprepared during regulatory reviews. Compliance obligations tie directly to specific data types, making their recognition critical. For example, processing credit card data invokes PCI DSS, handling healthcare information invokes HIPAA, and collecting data from EU residents invokes GDPR. These frameworks specify controls such as encryption, logging, access restrictions, and breach notification requirements. An organization unaware of its data types risks non-compliance, fines, and reputational damage. By tying compliance mandates directly to classification, organizations ensure that obligations are not treated as generic checklists, but as targeted protections, aligned with the nature of the data being handled. Ultimately, mapping data types to a layered protection strategy ensures that defenses are comprehensive and proportionate. This strategy incorporates prevention through encryption and access controls, detection through monitoring and logging, and response through backups and incident handling. For example, PII might be encrypted at rest, monitored for unauthorized access, and supported by rapid breach notification procedures. Intellectual property may be tightly restricted, monitored for exfiltration attempts, and backed up in isolated storage. By tailoring protections to the data itself, organizations ensure that resources are used wisely and risks are managed effectively across all information assets. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.